Hi guys, and welcome to grade 11 trigonometry. I'm Archimedes Tutor and we'll be going over secondary trigonometric ratios in this video. My previous lesson was trigonometry recalling basics from grade 10. Before we start this wonderful lesson, I will highly recommend that you know a thing or two about primary trigonometric ratios before starting secondary trigonometric ratios. So as you shall know, trigonometric ratios should only be applied for right triangles. So let me just go over the primary ratios again. Suppose I have my reference angle here. This is adjacent, the hypotenuse of the triangle, longest side, opposite the right angle. And this is the hypotenuse. So let me just start off with the first one. The sine ratio, which states that the opposite or hypotenuse is over hypotenuse. So sine of the reference angle is equal to the hypotenuse divided by the hypotenuse. The next one is the cosine ratio. The cosine of a reference angle is equal to the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Adjacent divided by hypotenuse. And the third one is tangent. Tan of an angle is equal to opposite over adjacent. So opposite divided by adjacent. Now for their secondary trigonometric ratios, which are also referred to as reciprocal trigonometric ratios, and you'll be seeing why. So the reciprocal ratio of sine is called cosecant, or CSC, is equal to hypotenuse over hypotenuse, which is its reciprocal, in that with the numerator becomes the denominator and the denominator becomes the numerator. For cosine, its reciprocal ratio is secant, referred to as H over A. And the reciprocal ratio of tangent is cotangent, referred to as A over O, adjacent over hypotenuse. And of course, we must add the reference angle signs. Let's just start off with some basic practice. So the first question states, find the cosecant of angle B. So again, we're going to write its formula. Cosecant of an angle equals hypotenuse over hypotenuse. We're just going to write it as a fraction. We're not actually going to find the angle. So cosecant of the angle is equal to hypotenuse, which is 10 in this case, and the hypotenuse is 8. So if I were to simplify it as a fraction, it will be 5 over 4. And that's your answer as a fraction. The second one is find the secant of angle B. So I'm going to write secant of angle is equal to hypotenuse over adjacent. So the hypotenuse in our case is 25, since it's the longest and opposite the right angle. And the adjacent is 15, adjacent to angle B. And again, if I were to simplify it, it will be 5 over 3. That's your answer. And the last one, find the cotangent of angle B. Write the formula. There's our angle over here. Its adjacent will be 30 and its hypotenuse will be 40. Simplify it to 3 over 4. And there we go. Now you have these answers, but you want to find the angle. So what will you do? Suppose I have the first one, and it says cosecant of the angle is equal to 5/4. So we're going to change it to its reciprocal ratio, which is sine. So it will become sine of the angle equals 4/5, since it's the reciprocal ratio. So we'll just do that now. Sine of -1 equals sine of -1 to 4 divided by 5, and it will give us approximately 53 degrees. And we have to do this since there's no cotangent, secant, or cosecant buttons on our calculator. Before we move on to our next practice, I just want to make sure that the reciprocal ratios are carefully understood. So to change a number into its reciprocal, all you have to do is place 1 above it. Meaning, suppose I have 5 and I want to change it to its reciprocal. I will place a 1 above it like this. So the numerator becomes the denominator. So 5 was the numerator and now it's the denominator. So another example is cotangent, which is equal to adjacent divided by hypotenuse, which is the same thing as opposite over adjacent to 1. Now back to our practice, we're going to be evaluating these angles. And these are special angles because they can be written into a rationalized answer. So let me just show you what I mean. So we'll start off with cosecant of 30. The first thing I want to do is to write it into its inverse primary ratio form. So I'm going to write it as sine of 30. And then I'm going to put a 1 above it to change it to its reciprocal. So let me just do that real quick with my calculator. So we're going to do sine of 30, which happens to be 0.5. So sine of 30 is 0.5. And since cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, we have to put a 1 above it to change it to its reciprocal form. So 1 divided by 0.5 is 2. So cosecant of 30 is equal to 2. Next, secant of 45. This may be a bit tricky. So again, write it into its primary ratio form and put a 1 above it. 1 divided by cosine of 45. Let's find what cosine of 45 looks like. Sorry. So it's equal to 0.707106781. So this is not a rational number since it goes on and on. So I'm going to divide 1 by cos of 45. And let's see what that brings us. .414213 blah blah blah. So I'm going to be writing 1.41 ... But this number looks strangely familiar. And I can write it into its rational form since it's a special angle. So if I'm going to make sure I can do this by squaring it. And if I square it, it might get me an integer. Ta-da! It got me 2. So I can write it as the square root of 2. The square root of 2 is equal to the number we just found. So the secant of 45 is equal to the square root of 2. The last one, cotangent of 45 degrees. You know what to do? Tan, sorry. That's a tan. 1 divided by the tan of 45 degrees, bracket, that gives us 1. Now we'll just do the inverse of secondary trigonometric ratios real quick. Let's start off with the first one. Secant of angle equals the square root of 2. So the way to do this is write its primary ratio, which is cosine. So write it as cosine of angle equals, and we'll also need to find the reciprocal of the square root of 2. So one way we can do that is to put 1 above it. So now let's just plug that into our calculator. 1 second. So 1 divided by the square root of 2 gets us back to 0.7071068. It'll be a pain to remember this, so I'm just going to write the first 3 digits I see. 707. And cos of angle equals 0.707. Now at this point you should be pretty comfortable. You can just inverse this. So cos to the power of -1, plug in your value 0.707, and that should give you approximately 45 degrees. Or probably exactly 45 degrees since I rounded it. So your angle is equal to 45 degrees. Next, cotangent of the angle is equal to the square root of 3. Same thing, the inverse of cotangent is tangent. Tan of angle equals 1 divided by the square root of 3. And evaluate that. 1 divided by the square root of 3. That gives us 0.5773. I'm just going to remember that. Tan of angle equals 0.5773. And again, do its inverse. Tan to the power of -1, 0.5773, and approximately round it to 30 degrees. So angle is equal to 30 degrees. And our last one. This may be a bit difficult. Secant of angle is equal to 2 times the square root of 3 over 3. Right is inverse, which is cos of angle equals, I'm just going to draw a line to separate, 3 divided by 2 times square root of 3. Evaluate that. 3 divided by 2 times square root of 3. Memorize the number 0.8660. So cos of angle is 0.8660. Do its inverse. Cos to the power of -1, 0.8660, and we get 30 degrees again. So angle is 30 degrees. And that's it. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please subscribe to my channel. For more information on the lessons I will be uploading, please visit my website www.archimedestutor.com. My next lesson will be area of a triangle, done by the law of sines. Until then, stay tuned to Archimedes Tutor.